Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, even while you're at a film festival, you do want to get your freak on every once in a while. But that tends to have to happen after the clock strikes midnight, or in this case, 11:59. But if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in light and in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can hit the old like and subscribe button, give us the old 5-star rating, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. We're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. It's pretty much all good. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram, as the kids call it, at, well, where else would we be? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, you guessed it, the Toronto International Film Festival kicks off today. Yes, boys and girls, today, from the 8th through the 18th, with well over 200 selections for you to enjoy, and people are flocking from all around the world to our fair city to take part in the madness. But and that's a good segue, because we're really referencing the Midnight Madness, as it were, which is a long-standing program of films. It's at the Toronto International Film Festival, which, like I said, runs from the September 8th through to the 18th. And this program delves in the weird, the wild, the crazy, the abstract, the ones that are just a little bit different. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Peter Kuplowsky, who has been programming the Midnight Madness program for the festival for the past few years, but also this year, in as the doors to the Lightbox reopened and things started to slowly but surely get back to normal in the I don't want to say post-pandemic, but you know, in the stage where we're all dealing with COVID and sort of figuring stuff out. They've been doing a monthly series highlighting selections from past Midnight Madness, and also stuff that would have qualified for Midnight Madness, really from sort of back in the day, with a really wide array of some pretty interesting stuff. And we talked with Peter about not only his Cinematheque series, which, like I said, is a monthly thing going on before, and also it'll be going on after TIFF as well at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, but we got in a little bit about the program for this year's Midnight Madness, which promises to be a fun one. But if you're in Toronto and you're a film fan, if you're not already have your tickets for TIFF, or if not already lined up, what are you waiting for? Go do it, because this is the cinema lover's dream. The world of film and cinema is flocking to Toronto, so it is time to get on board. But first, get on board with our talk with Peter, as we talk a little Midnight Madness, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one. All right, boys and girls, obviously we're in the wild once again, doing an episode of In the Seats with. Right now, we're in the lobby of the TIFF Bell Lightbox. We're waiting on a screening for a little bit of Cinematheque, something that we hold near and dear to our hearts here at In the Seats. And we're talking to a good friend, somebody who works here at TIFF, but it's also the programmer of the Midnight Madness program that you all know and love during the festival proper, but also they've launched a series for Cinematheque, a monthly series, to get people sort of engaged with the older stuff, which I think is a beautiful thing. But please welcome Mr. Peter Kuplowsky. Buddy, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. We're going to be watching Perita Durango in a bit.
So it's going to be good times.
It's going to be hot.
But, I mean, I guess my first question is, I mean, obviously coming out of the pandemic, coming out of lockdown, or whichever number it was, it feels like there's been a focus on like very specific programming and trying to sort of engage with audiences again and get people back into, literally get butts back in the seats, pardon the pun. But like, walk me through, I guess, the origin of launching the screening series on your end, because this has never been done before.
No, no. It's wild that we didn't. That the TIFF building never did a midnight series, and I owe a lot of the idea to. Let me start it again. It is wild that TIFF Bell Lightbox hasn't done a midnight series yet. We did a best of Midnight Madness that Colin Geddes curated during his tenure. That was like a sort of limited series in the building of some of his sort of favorite classics from the past. But it had always been like an idea that had been, mentioned and discussed. And it actually wasn't the pandemic. The idea originates like a year before the pandemic. My co-curator with the series, who's running late, and will be joining the interview a little bit later, Leanne Kunji, she was pitching the idea, and I was actually looking to, allocate a dedicated budget to do this series, because one of the things I said that if we were going to do it, I wanted to do it right. I wanted to show stuff on film as they were presented, when they played Midnight Madness. And then the other idea we had was that it wouldn't just be us showing movies that had played the Midnight Madness festival, because that would limit us between 1988 and now. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more curious, would go back a little further. And so the idea we came up with was, well, let's imagine that Midnight Madness existed since 1896, and what would be the 10 films that get into the Midnight Madness section for every year leading up to 1988. And so we've been kind of doing a back and forth program where 1 month we will do an alumni, so a film that came from 1988 to now, and if we're looking within that range, we're limited to the 10 films each year that played a Midnight Madness edition at the Toronto International Film Festival. And if we want to find something before 1988, it's really just us postulating what might have played, what deserved to play, what should have played had Midnight Madness existed. And that became a really fun experiment. And I think one of the reasons why the idea was finally embraced at TIFF is because I think the Midnight Madness audience is such an adventurous audience, both figurative and literally. They're an audience that that really understands and appreciates the community aspect of watching movies, and therefore it's the perfect audience to try and encourage to return to the movie theater. And so I think that was one of the reasons why we got the green light, and I'm glad we did, and we've been having a lot of fun for these past 6 months.
And having been at the screening last month for Peter Bogdanovich's Targets, on a 35mm print that looked like it was destined to break but didn't, and it was a fantastic experience. And I'm kind of curious, how has the feedback been from audiences, especially as you're mixing it up?
People have been enjoying it so far. I do feel like we haven't quite hit our stride yet in fully recreating the energy of a Midnight Madness room. I think that's partially due to the fact that we're in sometimes Cinema 4 at the Lightbox, and I think that this is a state-of-the-art theater, but I also think its acoustics sometimes aren't necessarily the best for, it's almost, the sound is too good, I find, and so you can't really hear the other audience members, at least when it's not a full house. And we haven't had full houses lately because last month we had an air conditioning break. When we started it, we weren't still at 100% yet, so I'm waiting for when we start bringing an audience in here where it's a sold-out show and we can get rowdy, because we want to encourage the audience to be like, this is Midnight Madness, throughout the year. Let's get rowdy like Midnight Madness. Let's get excited. And there's every reason to be excited, because we're playing rare prints that may break or explode in front of us. As the Targets print, we were warned that print might not survive the trip. It did, thankfully. But we're also, what I also think is making it really exciting is that we're pairing these features with experimental films, because TIFF used to have a free experimental series that I thought was really terrific, and hopefully that'll come back too as things begin to return to a relative state of normalcy. But I've always felt that Midnight Madness as a program is something that actually is somewhat connected to TIFF's experimental program wavelengths in a certain respect. I think midnight films aren't just genre films. I think in a sense they're experimental genre films, that they are taking risks and innovating with form and style, and therefore I really like the idea of pairing a Midnight Madness film with underground experimental works from filmmakers like Richard Kern or Kenneth Anger. Tonight we're just showing Alex de Iglesias' first short film, and I hope we can continue that tradition because there's less hype or sometimes less knowledge going in from the audience with regards to the short film, so that can kind of be as a surprise, where a lot of the other movies might be something you've heard of before, or maybe even seen before and want to see again on 35, and maybe you saw it at Midnight Madness for that matter.
No, I mean, I love that you bring up trying to recreate the energy of Midnight Madness because, I mean, obviously we're a little over a week away from festival proper, like as close to full speed as we've been, but I mean, I'm curious because we have had a venue change.
Yeah.
The program has moved downtown with the masses, with everything else. Like, how do you feel audiences are maybe not just going to accept the new venue, but how do you think you're going to be able to sort of recreate that vibe? Because, I mean, there is nothing like a Midnight Madness crowd, especially at midnight.
I think it's hard to ever try to recreate something that emerged so organically. I don't think you can ever repeat what the vibe was like at the Ryerson Theater where it used to be, any more that you can recreate the vibe that was at the Uptown or the Bloor Cinema before that. During the pandemic, we had Midnight Madness editions at the Lightbox. We actually had one Midnight Madness edition at the Princess of Wales for Titan last year. And frankly, that screening I actually thought really did feel like a Midnight Madness movie because it was just the volume of the crowd.
Right.
I think really helped. And, the Royal Alex is where we're at now. It's, over 100 years of history, which I think is great. Probably a few ghosts there. Phantom of the Opera was there for a long time. This all feels like stuff that, fits the Midnight Madness vibe. And it's a large theater. It's it's something that's close to the numbers that Midnight has attracted in the past. So I feel very confident that at the end of the day, if I've done my job right with in terms of the selections, it's the movies that are going to be the spark, and the audience is just the fuel.
Well, someone will bring the beach balls for sure, so that'll be fine.
Well, I hope so. So I'm excited about the venue change. I'm hoping that we don't have to keep hopping around every year. I'd love to find a permanent home. I do miss, some people will probably relish that Midnight Madness is down near where the other theaters are because it means that when they're seeing a special presentation or gala, they can get to the Midnight Madness screening in a quick time. I kind of miss it being its own little island somewhere else across the city. It would be cool to go back to that, but I'm really excited to see how this feels. And again, I like that it's in an old building, a building with a lot of old history. I'm excited for that.
Now, I mean, I'm curious because, I mean, in the years I've been covering TIFF, when you look at the programmer and the program has always reflected the programmer to varying degrees, and I think that's very true, probably most true when it comes to Midnight Madness. Now, I mean, obviously you've been in the role for a few years now, but I mean, with the venue change, with everyone coming back out of it, it kind of feels like this is, at least to me, this feels like the year where you're really getting a chance to make your stamp on it.
I mean, I thought I was trying to make my stamp on the program when I started by playing a battle rap movie as my opening night film.
Bodied, man, absolutely.
Yeah, Joseph Kahn's Bodied was the first film I programmed in 2017, and that was really born out of the idea that, when I looked back at what Noah Cowan was doing when he started the program, there was a lot of music, documentary, there was a lot of attention paid to alternative culture. And that was, I think, very important to him as a programmer, and subversion and sort of transgressive cinema. To an extent, that was important to Colin, too. But you're right, we all kind of have our individual stamp, our unique sensibilities, and we go in kind of distinct directions. So it is important. I mean, for me, I really just wanted to deliver a lineup that I felt was going to deliver a really good time. I'll actually admit, there's a lot of comedies in the section, but because I really wanted reactive movies that I felt were going to elicit really strong reactions from the audience, and I was happy to find films that would have positive reactions. I mean, I'm playing a film like Leonore Will Never Die on closing night, which some people will notice is kind of a measuredly paced film for midnight, but it has such good vibes. It's in complete conversation with cult films and cult appreciation, and it does so, I think, so authentically and so charismatically. I just feel like it's going to send everybody out of the festival with such like a good feeling, and it's a feeling that I hope can last year round, or at least for the month until the next Midnight Madness presents at the Lightbox comes. That's sort of been part of the goal. But I never try to like start off the year and say, okay, I'm going to accomplish these things. There's always movies on the horizon that I'll earmark and go, it'd be cool if that happened. But I never try to look at the things that get away, except for Barbarian, which is why I'm screening it at Midnight Dankness, which is this like rogue version of Midnight Madness I set up on September 7th. By the time your listeners hear this, I think the screening may have been sold out, or all the RSVPs have gone. But that was a movie I very much wanted at Midnight Madness, and due to release dates, just didn't work out. But now I got to play 10 movies that I love and an 11th movie. I'm hosting it the day before TIFF, so I think it's a win-win situation.
And Barbarian will be open on the regular in theaters everywhere on September 8th, so really you could do a double bill, go see the 9 o'clock, and then run down to Midnight Madness. And
I mean, it might be a tradition, because it feels like these studios love releasing great genre movies at the end of August. They did it with Malignant last year, a movie that really would have brought down the house at Midnight Madness. But I'm not going to tell the studios what to do, but I might bring the audience to their movie.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, man. And I mean, I'm glad that the program this year really does seem to be bookended by some happiness, because I mean, obviously, I think Weird Al's going to bring some crazy energy to Midnight Madness. For sure.
It can't be all feel bad. I mean, I there's been years where I do have a couple feel bad midnight films. I think they're important. I think a midnight program should have stuff that's challenging, that's transgressive, and that's uncomfortable and confrontational. But I did feel like this year I kind of wanted a little bit maybe more levity than I think someone was like, heartwarming is not usually a description of a Midnight Madness movie, and there's a couple in there that I actually would describe as heartwarming.
No, I mean, obviously Midnight Madness is going to have a mix of sort of bigger high-profile ones, like you said, Weird Al. I mean, obviously Pearl, the prequel to X, but I'm kind of curious, for audiences out there who don't necessarily understand the vibe of Midnight Madness, is there anything that's kind of under the radar that you would say if you're trying to capture the feel of the experience?
I think, I don't know, I think this film's a bit under the radar, even though I don't think it should be, because it's by a name director, at least a name director if you've been paying attention to Midnight Madness or TIFF in general, and that's the Finnish film Sisu, directed by Jalmari Helander, who was responsible for Rare Exports, a Vanguard title, and Big Game, a Midnight Madness title, and he's made a Finnish Rambo movie that I've compared to both like First Blood and Mad Max Fury Road. It's pretty much 90 minutes of a hard-to-kill Finn creatively killing Nazis. Like, it's going to be so much fun. I mean, the Midnight Madness crowd is really like a rock concert. They're such a generous audience. They're there to have a good time, and they're going to react to whatever's on screen. I think that movie's full of moments that are going to elicit huge reactions. Elsewhere in the lineup, I mean, I think the John Hyams, Kevin Williamson combo, Sick, is packed with a lot of like really suspenseful sequences that are going to definitely elicit some noises from the audience. I think Project Wolf Hunting is the bloodiest film I've played since Revenge. So so far it's only been French women that have made French women directors that have made our audience faint. But I do wonder about Project Wolf Hunting. Not that that's scary. It's just it's action.
The amount of viscera.
But there's so much viscera in the film. I think some people might have a reaction to it, because I was just bowled over by how much blood there is. So there's gonna be a lot of applause and a lot of gasps and like ughs and oohs during that screening. And that's another thing that Colin Getty's always taught me, which is don't serve the same dish every night. Like, really try to change it up every night. I mean, even Saturday and Sunday this year are 2 home invasion films. Sick is one of them on the Sunday, and on the Saturday is The Blackening, a film that is almost like the opposite of Sick in certain respects, because it's heavier on the comedy, and like the horror aspect is a little less transgressive or challenging. The transgressiveness and I think the provocative stuff is all on the page. It's in the script. But yet they're like somewhat similar situations in terms of people staying in a remote cabin and then it's being invaded by violent interlopers.
Well, I will say this much. I mean, in the years I've been covering TIFF, I always do try to at least catch one at midnight, and I do think Finish Rambo is going to fit the bill for me. Even with all these 8 a.m. press and industry screenings I'm going to have to make, but it's just...
That one's going to be special. We got some things that I can't say right now planned for the pre-show that I think will be pretty cool.
Cannot wait for that, but man, you know what? I'm looking forward to the fun that people are going to get to have again in the theater thanks to your program. And just, man, thank you for the time, and I can't wait to see what's coming up in the fall with the Cinematheque programming and the monthly series, too.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll actually move the time slot to these Midnight Madness Presents things to midnight. We won't, because nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go to midnight, like when it's not a film festival going on. Like, I feel like that culture doesn't exist in Toronto at the moment.
We're all getting a little too old for that.
Maybe we're all getting too old. And hopefully Leanne Kunji will show up and drop some notes about what we've been putting together, because it's been pretty special, and we got some new. We've just started really working on the next season, because we're going to be taking a break, obviously, in September due to TIFF. But hopefully we'll be returning back in October and November and onwards with some exciting Midnight Madness.
Well, congrats again, man. And again, thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
Cheers, Pete.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.